Hello there! Welcome to another round of Kevin's Classes, a series of presentations in the field of education. In today's presentation, which will be delivered in a Pecha Kucha format, which is a PowerPoint presentation of 20 slides with 20 seconds each, we'll be talking about practice. In 1898, scientist Norman Triplett was researching the speed of cyclists when he noticed that racing against each other rather than against the clock actually increases the cyclist's speed. He also attempted to duplicate this under similar conditions for children, but using fishing reels, and he noticed that it was also inherent among children as well. This would come to be known as social facilitation. In 1925, scientist Lee Edward Travis found that well-trained subjects were better at psychomotor tasks in front of spectators, which means that it is not only in the state of competition that increases our abilities, but also in the presence of spectators. In 1956, Robert Zions offered the theoretical explanation that the presence of others increases psychological arousal. During a state of arousal, he argued that performance increases when a task is easy or familiar, while performance decreases when a task is difficult or unknown. In other words, we perform better in simple tasks in a crowd, but we perform better in complex tasks alone. Zions decided to replicate this experiment with cockroaches, who have limited or no cognitive processing, to see if this would also work in the animal kingdom. In Figure 1, two tasks were assigned to the same cockroach. A simple task where a cockroach only has to run straight through a tube. In box 1, he runs alone. In box 2, he runs with peers watching him. As predicted, the ones with peers watching him was the one that made him go faster. Now, in Figure 2, the trained cockroach now has to make a 90-degree turn to the right to complete the task. In box 1, once again, it is against itself. And in box 2, it's in the presence of peers. And against itself, it was able to perform quicker on its own than in the presence of others. But if social facilitation is biological, then how much control can we actually have? This is why in live performances, coaches call timeouts, performers have intermissions, because once we do step back on the stage, psychological arousal has taken over, and all we can do is trust in ourselves to perform the best that we can. How does this apply to you, you might ask? How about public speaking? How about leading a group of people? Or just being efficient at your job? These are all things that we often take for granted, that we do repeat again and again to get good at this task. And why is it that some are destined for greatness, and that some are doomed to fail? Is it talent? Michael Jordan once said, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games, and on 26 occasions I have been entrusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." The reality is that we do not control whether or not we fail, but we do control if we succeed, eventually. As much as we fear it, failure is an essential part of success. It is what we choose to do with failure is how we define our success. And in the end, there are only two things we can do. We can quit, but I'd like to talk about something else today. Sorry, Allen Iverson, but today we're talking about practice.
I mean, listen, we talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice. Not a game. Not the game that I go out there and die for and play every game like it's my last. Not the game. We're talking about practice.
Yes, practice, practice, and more practice. Despite that rant, Allen Iverson actually does practice a lot and is an extraordinary player. And like most great players, it is not only what you practice, but how and when you practice. And find any time you can to get that practice. We've all heard that expression, that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. But what is often negated is consistency. Because while the skills can be acquired, they can be lost as well. 10,000 hours spread over 50 years is a lot different than 10,000 hours spread over 20 years. It is actually more important to practice in chunks every day than to strain yourself for hours on end. Studies show that gains actually decline on average after the 2-hour mark, as the level of concentration begins to decline. While this may vary with individuals, the efficiency of practice actually increases with breaks, different scenarios, as well as sleep. When we think of practice, we often think of shooting a free throw or practicing the same piece for 3 hours. New studies actually show that to increase our cognitive abilities, we actually have to test our skills in different scenarios. Mindless practice solidifies bad habits, is tedious and boring, and believe it or not, makes you less confident the more you begin to lose concentration. So if not mindless practice, then what do we do? While mindless practice can solidify fundamentals, it doesn't train those fundamentals to react under real pressure. What do we do when we don't have all the pieces? That's why pianists have recitals, coaches run game simulations and practices, and so on. They are training the mind to deal with the unknown and the possibility of failure. And even the exposure of your practices are quite important. Are they valid and relevant? Did your coach give you the proper feedback? Did your teacher have the proper equipment? Did your employer give you the proper avenues to develop yourself? Do you know what you want and what you're willing to sacrifice to get the best practice possible? So you know when it's game time, it is time for you to shine. Of course, after all that practice, the most important part is sleep. One particular study tested participants on piano exercises. They found that groups that did simple patterns with one hand improved 17% in speed and had 47% fewer errors after practice and sleeping. No improvement was found with the same amount of time passing in waking hours. This is why all-nighters don't particularly work. Once you lose concentration, the efficiency of your practice exponentially decreases. It is said that 17 hours awake is equivalent to a blood alcohol content of 0.05% in terms of your response time and concentration. Of course, in the past 6 minutes, there's only so much I can tell you. We've only begun to dive into the world of practice. I urge you to look more into specific techniques and to open up to the idea of practice as well as embracing failure as another step to success. This has been Kevin's Classes, and I wish you the best of luck.